Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jenviev and I'm here to tell you about my theory about visionaries. And that is that visionaries have no vision. So a couple of disclaimers before I start. No, I do not claim to be a visionary by any stretch, but I do play in a field where many people are. I am the co-founder and president of two organizations, one called PPLCONNECT, which is a mobile tech startup, and the other one which is called WeHost Refugees, which is a not-for-profit. I've spent the past 4 years studying and understanding what makes successful visionaries, and I'd like to share some of those findings with you today. So first things first, I'd like to ask everybody, and I really do mean it, to please close your eyes and imagine what is a visionary to you. Other than Steve Jobs, oh, you guys can open your eyes. Other than Steve Jobs, I'm sure a lot of you actually had a picture somewhat similar to this. Somebody staring out into the distance, seeing ahead, being able to tell the future better than the rest of us and make calculated decisions based on these predictions. The truth is, that's kind of hilarious when you think about it, because visionaries aren't people who have a crystal ball. They're not psychics by any stretch. However, they do have one key trait on which they outperform the majority of us, and that is that they make better decisions. So this got me thinking, for myself, for my startup, how do they make better decisions? Why is that? Is it because they have some kind of special gift? Are they better educated? Are they smarter than the rest of us? Do they have some kind of sixth sense when it comes to making decisions? And the truth is, none of those things are really true. You wouldn't be able to generalize across the board that any of those things apply to all visionaries. But I do have a hypothesis, and that is that visionaries master 3 key elements. The elements being that they have a very deep self-awareness, that they love problems and problem solving, and finally, that they know their audience better than anybody else. And these are the elements that fuels their decision-making power and in turn makes them visionaries. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time going through the 3 elements and how they apply, starting with a deep sense of self-awareness. So this is typically the starting point for most visionaries, where you start to understand what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. From there, you start building up a sense of confidence and of personal value and worth. And with that, you then see a direct correlation between your actions and the outcomes that ensue. And so this drives you to get involved and to start projects. Once you gain a deep sense of self-awareness, it actually helps making decisions along the way significantly easier. You know where you fit in and you know what decisions are right for you inherently because you have this understanding. There's 2 additional points I'd like to say within a deep sense of self-awareness. And the first one is about building your personal USP. So for those in marketing, USP is a unique selling proposition. It's a marketing concept typically applied to sell products and services. In this case, I'm applying it to individuals. And I ask all of you actually to think about what is your core USP. I believe that this is an area that all visionaries excel at, where they're able to boil down their strengths and their weaknesses into one core attribute that not only defines them, but defines their decisions that they take. Another important part here is that I've never met a visionary who doesn't have a plan. It may not be visible to the rest of us, but they always have a plan on where they're heading. And that is the ultimate outcome and goal that they're working towards. Once you have an outcome that you're hoping to achieve, it's a lot easier along the way to carve out your path and make decisions that are right to achieve it. I'd actually ask all of you tonight or tomorrow over the course of the next week to literally sit down with a pen and paper and write down what is your end goal. It seems like a simple exercise, but it's actually pretty challenging to start thinking about. For you, is success being at the top of an organization? Is it being the best designer in your field? Is it about having an impact on other people that's positive? Once you define that end goal and then start working backwards, it becomes a lot easier to identify where the gaps are and what decisions you need to take to get there. I thought I'd also take the opportunity to share a little bit about my personal story. So not that long ago, I graduated from Concordia University, I'm sure like many of you here, and I faced a very similar problem, which was, where do I go now? So many things interested me. I was interested by PR, by advertising, by digital marketing, and I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. And so I asked myself these questions, and I figured out a few things along the way. I realized that I needed to work in an environment where I could solve large problems and feel like I have a voice at the table. I also needed to work in an environment that brought together my two strengths, which are creativity and strategic analytical thinking. And I wanted to work in an environment that was fast-paced and innovation-driven. And this is where I identified my first USP, which was to be a strategic digital marketer. And to be honest, I still live by a lot of the things that I learned writing these things down back then. So with this in hand, I then went on to work at Mega Bloks, the toy company, where I was able to apply this USP, and then Bombardier. Here I held two concurrent roles, one of which was being a brand manager to this line of private jets, and the other one, which was to be the manager of the new media digital portfolio. So what happened was, because I had a sense of where I was going and what my strengths and weaknesses were, I was actually able to gain a leadership position and have a large influence on a very big organization at a very young age. So I was the youngest recruit on my team, and yet I was able to sit in on very high-level meetings throughout the organization. My time here culminated with the launch of this aircraft, which was regarded as the largest, the most successful launch in business aviation history, capped off by a $6 billion sale to Warren Buffett's company, NetJets. So after this, I found myself at another point in my career going, well, what's next? And so I took the seemingly hard decision to quit my job and start my own business, PPLCONNECT. I say seemingly because the truth is it really wasn't that hard. I knew where I ultimately wanted to go, and this just felt like the right move for me. So I kind of decided within a couple of days. The next point I wanted to talk about is to love problems and to love problem solving. Most of us, the minute that we run into a problem, what do? We turn the other way. In fact, some of us even run the other way. Why? Because problems are inherently scary. Biologically, they cause stress, fear, uncertainty. And the truth is, for visionaries, they cause all of these same emotions as well, but they also cause a sense of excitement. Why? Because you're going into the unknown. You're looking at solving something that nobody's ever solved before, and it's an opportunity to be innovative. So next time you face a problem, whether it be professional or personal, I ask you to really think about how every major breakthrough we know today, whether it be the invention of the automobile, vaccination, light bulbs, all of those things came from people who faced very large problems. And the difference between visionary and the rest of us is that visionaries don't have less problems, but when they face problems, they stick around long enough to solve them. So recently, I was actually in a position where I faced a large problem. A group of us from the Montreal tech and startup community started meeting to talk about the Syrian refugee crisis. And at the time, Canada had just announced that we would be taking in 25,000 refugees, which was great. But the problem was that there was insufficient space for all of the refugees to have a proper home when they would arrive. This is why you may have heard of refugees staying in military bases, etc. So we decided to try to solve this problem. And we came up with an innovative solution called WeHost, which is to offer a service like Airbnb, but for refugees, where anybody with a spare bedroom or basement can apply to host a refugee directly in their home. And we launched this a couple months ago. The last part of the puzzle is to know your audience. And sadly, I feel like this is so often the forgotten piece. People think about building up their self-confidence, their self-awareness. They also work hard on problem solving. Some people naturally excel at this, especially in the more technical or scientific domains. But they forget about who their actual audience is. And the truth is, without an audience, you're just speaking to yourself. So the first part of understanding your audience is really asking yourself the question, who cares? Who cares about what I'm doing? Who cares about what I'm studying? Who cares about the product that I'm selling? Because I have never met a visionary who didn't have a following of people that are inspired behind them, that believe in their value system, that want to buy their product, that want to advocate their brand. So this is crucial in order to really, truly become a visionary. And this is actually an area that I have spent a lot of time myself and for my startup PPLCONNECT. When you're starting an organization from scratch, you don't have an audience. And so you have to spend most of your time trying to figure out who are going to be the people that really believe in your product and your solution. And so this is something that we've actually had to completely start over, pivot, change, adapt along the way to continue to learn and build a successful business. So on that, I now leave you with these thoughts. Next time that you find yourself thinking about visionaries, forget the idea of the person looking ahead, seeing through the future, but rather think about how you can be a better decision maker by applying these 3 fairly simple concepts to yourself. Thank you very much.